The men who betray their country almost always have something in common. They feel invisible, unseen by the institution they gave their life to, unheard by the system they swore to protect. And at some point quietly, privately, with no audience, they decide that if the country will not see them, then the country will pay for it. Robert Hanssen was not invisible. That is what made him different from all the others. He was the man the FBI trusted to find men like him. He ran the investigations. He wrote the threat assessments. He sat in the meetings where counterintelligence officers listed the warning signs, the behavioral red flags, the financial irregularities, the telltale cracks in loyalty, and he nodded along. Because he had already thought of all of them. He had already made sure none of them applied to him. The 18th of February, 2001, Foxstone Park, Northern Virginia. The morning is cold. The sky is a flat gray that gives nothing away. A man in a dark coat walks a familiar path through the park. His pace is unhurried. He has done this dozens of times, and his body knows the route the way it knows a commute, without thought, without hesitation, on a kind of muscle memory that only comes from years of repetition. He reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out a small roll of white adhesive tape. He stops at a signpost near the pedestrian crossing just west of the park entrance, looks once to the left, once to the right, presses a single vertical strip of tape onto the post with his thumb. Smooth, deliberate. Then he walks to the footbridge. Under the corner of the wooden planking, in the narrow gap between the bridge and the frozen ground, he places a plastic bag. Inside, 7 classified FBI documents. A computer diskette containing an encrypted letter addressed to friends he has never once met face to face. He covers the package so it disappears from view. He straightens up, adjusts his coat, turns to walk back toward the parking lot. They are already there. Robert Philip Hanssen, 25-year veteran of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, expert in Soviet counterintelligence. The man who spent his entire career hunting Soviet spies was a Soviet spy. He had been one for 22 years. He operated inside the very building where the mole hunters worked. He read the reports about himself and helped write the assessments about leaks he was personally responsible for. For 2 full decades, nobody caught him. How does a man spend 22 years hunting himself and never once get caught? The 12th of January, 1976. FBI Academy, Quantico, Virginia. The room is fluorescent lit and formal in the way government rooms always are when they want you to understand the weight of what you are agreeing to. Robert Hanssen stands with the other new agents. He is 31 years old. He has the bearing of a man who has been waiting a long time for something to begin. He reads the oath of office aloud. His voice is steady. No trembling, no visible emotion. He says the words about supporting and defending the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He says the words about true faith and allegiance. When they hand him the FBI pledge for law enforcement officers, he signs it without hesitation. The pledge reads, in part, I accept the obligation, in connection with my assignments, to consider the information coming into my knowledge, by virtue of my position as a sacred trust, to be used solely for official purposes. In the performance of my duties and assignments, I shall not engage in unlawful and unethical practices. He folds the paper, slides it into his jacket pocket. He had read Philby's book. He was 14. Kim Philby, the most famous spy who ever lived. A British intelligence officer who worked for the KGB for 30 years, who burned assets and buried trails, and smiled at his colleagues in the hallways of MI6 while feeding their secrets to Moscow. Who was never caught by the people who knew him. Who escaped to the Soviet Union in 1963 and died there, decades later, decorated. Philby had written a memoir. Hanssen had read it as a teenager, and something in him had recognized something in its pages. The patience, the discipline, the particular satisfaction of operating on 2 levels simultaneously, of being the only person in any room who knew the whole truth. That recognition had never entirely faded. He joins the FBI's Soviet Analytical Unit. His job is to study the enemy, to understand how Soviet intelligence operates, where it is vulnerable, what its agents look like, how they are run, how they are caught. By every measurable standard, he is exceptional at it. He thinks in ways other analysts do not. He sees patterns others miss. His assessments are precise, thorough, genuinely useful. What his supervisors do not do is say so. He submits a lengthy analysis, identifying structural vulnerabilities in how the FBI tracks Soviet intelligence assets on American soil. The report runs to 60 pages. It sits in an inbox. Weeks pass. A colleague receives a commendation for work that Hanssen considers routine. Another agent is promoted. Hanssen remains where he is. He does not complain. He does not raise it. He returns to his desk, opens another file, and continues. But something is settling into place inside him. Not bitterness exactly. Not rage. Something quieter and more patient than either of those. A kind of arithmetic. He is contributing something that is not being acknowledged. That asymmetry, in his mind, is not a grievance to be voiced. It is a balance to be corrected. September 1985. His transfer orders arrive. New York field office. A lateral move, they call it. It is not a promotion. Everyone in the building understands what a lateral move is. He sits at his desk in Washington for the last time, opens a drawer, takes out a single sheet of paper, feeds it into his typewriter. He begins to type. The question was never whether Robert Hanssen felt unappreciated. The question, the one that will follow him for the next 22 years, is what a man like him decides to do about it. The 1st of October, 1985. He does not wait to be recruited. That is the first thing you have to understand. There is no Soviet handler who spots him at a cocktail party, no gradual seduction, no financial crisis that leaves him desperate. There is none of the conventional machinery of espionage that intelligence agencies write training manuals about. He walks up to the door and knocks. He has already researched the address. Victor I, Cherkashin, KGB line KR chief, the KGB's top counterintelligence officer at the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. Hanssen knows this man's role within the KGB, the way he knows the organizational chart of an enemy institution he has spent years studying. He types the letter himself. He addresses the outer envelope to a Soviet embassy official named Viktor Degtyar, who lives in Alexandria, Virginia. Inside the outer envelope is a second envelope. On it, he writes, "Do not open. Take this envelope unopened to Victor I, Cherkashin." The letter begins in capital letters. "Dear Mr. Cherkashin, soon I will send a box of documents to Mr. Degtyar. They are from certain of the most sensitive and highly compartmented projects of the U.S. intelligence community. All are originals to aid in verifying their authenticity. Please recognize for our long-term interests that there are a limited number of persons with this array of clearances. As a collection, they point to me. I trust that an officer of your experience will handle them appropriately. I believe they are sufficient to justify a $100,000 payment to me." Then he lists 3 names: Boris Yuzhin, Sergei Motorin, Valery Martinov, 3 Soviet intelligence officers who had been secretly recruited as American assets and were feeding intelligence back to Washington. 3 doubles. 3 of the most carefully protected secrets in the counterintelligence world, accessible only to a tiny circle of cleared personnel. Hanssen was one of those people. He adds a note about his own security concerns, a detail demonstrating, in case there was any doubt, that this is genuine. He signs it with a name that is not his own. The envelope goes into the morning mail. In Moscow, Cherkashin reads it. He recognizes immediately that this is either the most sophisticated trap the FBI has ever constructed or the greatest gift Soviet intelligence has ever received. He acts on the assumption that it is real. The documentation that follows confirms it. In Washington, Robert Hanssen goes back to his office at the FBI. He is married to Bernadette. They have children. They attend Mass. He teaches Sunday school. On weekday mornings, he drives to work in a car that is paid for, on streets he knows well, and he does not look over his shoulder. The $100,000 request had not been the point. He had made it because you ask for what a thing is worth, but he had not spent years living beyond his means. He was not driven here by desperation in the way most traders are. The money, when it comes, sits. A man who spies for money spends the money. A man who spies for ideology leaves a trail of manifestos. Hanssen did neither. He was doing something else, something harder to name. something that would take 2 more decades to fully understand. 2 of those 3 men he named would be executed. Did Hanssen know what he had just set in motion? The 24th of October, 1985. He mails a second package, postmarked from New York City. Inside, a letter establishing the operational framework of everything that follows. Dead drop locations, signal protocols, a code for dates and times, written with the precision of a man who spent his career thinking about these problems from the other direction. The drop location, a wooden footbridge just west of Nottoway Park in Northern Virginia, chosen because it is on a route he drives in the ordinary course of his daily life. He does not have to deviate. He passes this bridge the way a man passes any bridge he has no reason to remember. The signal site, a pedestrian crossing signpost on Old Courthouse Road. 1 vertical strip of white adhesive tape means, "I am ready to receive." 1 horizontal strip means, "The drop is filled." A second vertical strip after pickup means, "Received." The materials: an ordinary green or brown plastic trash bag wrapped around a waterproofed inner package, thumbtacks, clear tape to seal the bags. Everything available at any hardware store, in any kitchen drawer, in any ordinary home in Northern Virginia. He had written in his original letter that he wanted no specialized tradecraft, because no tradecraft means no pattern that a counterintelligence officer like himself would know how to look for. The Soviets respond through the Washington Times. A classified advertisement. Dodge 71, diplomat, needs engine work, 1000, with a phone number. With specific call times. He calls the number at the designated time. A voice confirms the drop is loaded. He goes to the park, retrieves the package, drives home. Inside the package, $100,000 in cash. That evening, dinner at home. The same house on Talisman Drive in Vienna, Virginia. The same kitchen. He sits down at the table, asks one of his kids how school went. The money is in the car. He does not buy a new car, does not renovate the house, does not open a new account, or take the family on expensive vacations. The $100,000 filters away from him in small amounts over time a family member's need here. A donation there, and not a cent of it changes his own visible standard of living in any measurable way. Think about what that tells you. A man who spies for money changes the way he lives. That is the whole point. The money is the reward, and the reward is the reason. But Hanssen does not want the reward. He does not want a yacht or early retirement. He wants the operation to work. He wants the sustained proof renewed every time the tape comes down, the package disappears, and nothing happens that he is smarter than the system he operates inside. The FBI had looked through him for 9 years. He was making sure they paid for it, not in money, in proof. He had $100,000 in his pocket, and the FBI had no idea. So what does a man like this do the very next morning? He goes to work, he opens his files, he reads the intelligence reports. He attends the briefings, he is the briefings. September 1985, August 1987. In Moscow, orders are given. The process moves quietly, through channels that exist precisely to ensure that the people making the final decisions are never the ones who watch the consequences. Sergei Motorin is arrested. KGB, Line PR, Washington, recruited as an American asset, identified, executed. Valery Martinov is arrested. KGB, Line X, also Washington, also recruited, also identified, also executed. 2 men, 2 families, 2 ends. In Washington, Robert Hanssen goes to work, opens his computer, checks the intelligence feeds. He already knew. He had known for weeks because the reporting moved through the same channels he monitored every day. He reads the updates with the same attention he brings to everything. He files them. He moves on. He already knew because he put those names in an envelope. Whether he anticipated this specific outcome is a question that will never be cleanly answered. What can be said is that he was not a naive man. He was the opposite of a naive man. He was an expert in exactly this, in what happens to the names that get burned, in what the Soviets do with intelligence they receive. He knew the arithmetic of betrayal. He knew what he had set in motion. And he continued. What starts as 3 names becomes something larger. The documentation flowing out of Hanssen's access expands in scope each month. Operational details. The technical penetration of a specific Soviet facility. its location, its method, the device embedded in the structure, the communications intelligence it was designed to collect. Nuclear response planning documents. The identities of additional Soviet assets working for American intelligence. Material classified at the highest levels, designated SCI sensitive compartmented information, accessible to only a handful of people in the entire country. Each delivery follows the same rhythm. The tape on the signpost, the package under the bridge, the plastic bag, the clear tape, the envelope signed with a name that is not his own. He signs most of his letters, Ramon. Eventually, Ramon Garcia, a name with distance to it. A character who is not Robert Hanssen, but who carries Robert Hanssen's access, and who uses information only Robert Hanssen could provide. By the time he transfers back to Washington in August 1987, he has given the Soviets enough material to fill a library. The scale of it is not theatrical. In the day-to-day of his life, it has felt like administration. Like good, sustained, meticulous work, exactly the kind he always believed himself capable of, and the FBI had never properly valued. That was the terrifying part. Not the betrayal, the satisfaction. There was no version of what he had done that ended quietly. He knew it. He had always known it, in the way a man who thinks clearly about consequences knows things before they arrive. He had decided, somewhere in the gap between a lateral transfer and an envelope addressed to a KGB officer, that the question of ending was not one he was going to entertain. So he didn't. He crossed every line there was to cross. And the question the FBI would spend the next decade trying to form the question they could not yet even properly articulate was why he kept going. By 1991, the Soviet Union is gone. The Berlin Wall has been rubble for 2 years. The communist bloc has fragmented. In Moscow, the KGB is dissolved and reorganized, now called the SVR, the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation. Same people, different letterhead. The Cold War that Robert Hanssen spent his career fighting and simultaneously undermining is officially declared over. The FBI holds briefings. There is a sense, in certain parts of the building, of something like victory. But from across the world, through channels that Hanssen has maintained for 6 years, a message arrives. The SVR wants to continue. The relationship, the operation, the thing running out of the footbridge at Nottoway Park, they would like it to go on. He thinks about it. He agrees. Because the Soviet Union was never really the point. The point was the architecture, the discipline, the patience, the sustained functioning of a system he had designed himself. Inside the institution that was supposed to prevent exactly this. The enemy had changed its letterhead. The operation had not changed at all. And now, something new has been added. Inside the FBI, the awareness is growing slowly, imperfectly, without clean edges that something is wrong. Information has been leaking. Assets have been lost. Programs compromised in ways without obvious explanations. A quiet investigation begins. A mole hunt. The kind of slow, career-consuming exercise in institutional self-examination that intelligence agencies dread most because it requires them to look at themselves. Hanssen is assigned to the investigation. He reads every file, every lead, every theory about the source of the leaks. He attends the meetings. He is consulted. He contributes. The man investigating the leak is the leak. The man analyzing the behavioral profiles of potential moles is a mole. He is reading his own profile and finding, in the gap between the description and the face in the mirror, a certain cold satisfaction. He knows what they are looking for. He has always known. One afternoon, between meetings, the office quiet around him, he opens the FBI's internal database, the Automated Case Support System, the ACS, and runs a search. Cross-references that would surface any investigative interest in patterns of activity that correspond to him. The coffee is still warm. There is nothing unusual about a senior counterintelligence officer running a search. He does it every day. He types the parameters, presses enter, waits. The screen loads. No results matching his profile. Clean. He closes the window, gets up, refills his coffee from the pot at the end of the hall, returns to his desk, opens the next file. But the investigation was there, moving slowly and imperfectly in directions he was helping to misdirect. And the question, the one that would not fully form for another decade, was not whether it would find him. How long can a man investigate himself before the investigation finally looks in the right direction? The 14th of March, 2000. He opens a document on his computer. The date at the top. Below it, the salutation he has used for 15 years. Dear friends. He pauses. Then he begins to type. I have come about as close as I ever want to come to sacrificing myself to help you, and I get silence. I hate silence. The letter is not a threat. It is not an ultimatum. It is something closer to what it sounds like, the communication of a man who has been operating in near total psychological isolation for 15 years, who has given things of enormous value to people he has never met, and who has, in recent months, begun to feel the silence on the other side of that arrangement in a way that troubles him. He continues. Conclusion. One might propose that I am either insanely brave or quite insane. I'd answer neither. I'd say insanely loyal. Take your pick. There is insanity in all the answers. I have, however, come as close to the edge as I can without being truly insane. My security concerns have proven reality-based. I'd say, pin your hopes on insanely loyal and go for it. Only I can lose. He saves the document to a small card, a Versa card, the kind used for contact information. Easily hidden, easily carried. The security concerns are real. In recent months, he has detected what he believes to be intermittent burst radio signal emanations from his vehicle, the kind of technology a surveillance team uses. He does not mention this to anyone at work. He notes it, watches for it, lets it inform the very edge of his awareness. He has also been promoted. Senior Executive Service, a title, a window, a parking space with his name on a placard. What he does not have, in this new position, is regular access to the classified intelligence systems that have been the substance of his operation for 15 years. It is as if I am being isolated, he writes. He cannot be certain whether this is institutional indifference, the FBI's habitual failure to deploy its best people where they are actually most useful, or something more deliberate. Something that would mean the investigation has found a bearing in his direction. He searches the ACS system again, looks for any indication that the Bureau is aware of recent dead drop activity involving Russia. He finds nothing that points to him. Then, further down in the letter, something shifts. The operational tone gives way to something else entirely. I decided on this course when I was 14 years old. I'd read Philby's book. Now that is insane. Philby, the man whose memoir, a 14-year-old in Chicago, had read and recognized himself in. The man who operated for 30 years and was never caught by the people who knew him. Who died in Moscow, decorated, lonely, far from everything he had ever known. Hanssen writes the line with what reads like pride. The acknowledgement of a continuity of something decided long before the FBI, long before the oath, long before the letter to Cherkashin. A life that had been running parallel to the official one, perhaps from the very beginning. He signs the letter. Ramon Garcia, your friend. The question it raises, whether the FBI was losing him or had simply never really had him at all, is one the people who eventually read this letter will struggle with for a very long time. February 2001. The mole hunt had moved the way mole hunts always move, slowly, expensively, and wrongly. The FBI investigated dozens of its own agents, polygraphed hundreds. At one point, fixed its attention on a CIA officer named Brian Kelly, who was innocent, whose career was effectively destroyed by the suspicion, and who had nothing to do with any of it. The real answer did not come from within. It came from across the world, and it cost $7 million. In 2000, the FBI acquired a file from a former SVR officer. Inside, operational records. A garbage bag preserved from a dead drop still containing latent fingerprints. A voice recording made during a telephone contact between the asset and a Soviet handler, and documents that, taken together, painted a portrait of the source with remarkable precision. The file did not contain a name. The asset had been too careful for that. For 22 years, the SVR had run their most valuable American source without ever knowing who he was. They had code names, Raman, among others, but no photograph, no confirmed identity. He had refused in letter after letter to meet in person, and the SVR, unwilling to risk burning an operation of this value, had respected it. But a garbage bag holds fingerprints, and a recording holds a voice. The fingerprint matched the FBI's own internal records. The voice matched a recording in the Bureau's files. The name that came back was Robert Philip Hanssen. Across town, he writes his final letter to the SVR. He describes the signals he believes he is detecting, the radio emanations from the vehicle, the promotion that has moved him away from sensitive information, the growing unease. He is, as always, precise and analytical about it. He notes that he has left the surveillance signals alone because knowing of their existence is sufficient. Something has aroused the sleeping tiger, he writes. Perhaps you know better than I. And then he loads the package anyway. 7 classified FBI documents. A computer diskette. Everything wrapped in a plastic garbage bag, sealed with clear tape. There is a serious argument, one not easily dismissed, that the FBI's failure to find Hanssen for 22 years was not simply a matter of his being brilliant. It was a matter of systemic blindness. The Bureau had policies that made it structurally difficult to investigate senior agents with his level of clearance. Oversight mechanisms that should have flagged anomalous database searches, a counterintelligence officer running searches on himself did not trigger alerts. The culture that made it unthinkable to aggressively polygraph a 25-year veteran created the exact shelter he exploited. The FBI did not just fail to find Robert Hanssen. It built, without knowing it was doing so, the conditions in which a man like Hanssen could operate for as long as he did. He had sensed the trap. He wrote about it plainly in his final letter. He acknowledged the sleeping tiger, and he walked to the footbridge anyway. He placed the package under the bridge, put the tape on the signpost. The question of why, what compels a man who has already sensed the end to walk toward it rather than away, has no clean answer. But it suggests that the operation, by this point, was not really about the SVR anymore. It was about the thing it had always been about, the proof, the performance. The final demonstration that he had been here, had done all of this, and had been the only one in any room who ever knew the whole truth. The 18th of February, 2001. He walks toward the footbridge. The morning is the same morning it always is, gray, cold, the park quiet in the particular way that parks are quiet when the temperature keeps most people inside and the light hasn't fully committed to the day. He has walked this path so many times that his feet follow it independently of thought. He has signaled at this signpost in this park for 15 years. He presses the strip of white tape to the post. He walks to the bridge. He reaches under the planking and places the package in the gap where the bridge meets the frozen ground. He covers it the way he always has. He straightens up. He turns. They are already there. FBI agents emerge from the trees, from the parking lot, from the places in the park that look like nothing, that look like empty winter park, that he had assessed as clean every time he came here, and that were not clean today. He stops. For a moment, there is only the sound of the park, and agents moving, and his own breathing in the cold air. He looks at them. What took you so long? Robert Philip Hanssen is arrested on the 18th of February, 2001. He is charged with espionage and espionage conspiracy. What follows confirms everything the SVR file had indicated. 22 years. 15 active years of operation, 1985 to 2001. With a voluntary pause in the early 90s before he resumed contact. Over 50 dead drop exchanges. More than 6,000 pages of classified documents transmitted. The identities of agents. The details of covert programs. The technical specifications of collection systems. A hemorrhage of intelligence that damage assessments will later describe as the most damaging espionage in the Bureau's history. The total received from the KGB and SVR, approximately $1.4 million in cash, diamonds, and funds held in escrow in a Moscow bank he would never live to access. 2 Rolex watches. He pleads guilty on the 6th of July, 2001. 15 counts of espionage. The appropriate sentence, by agreement of all parties, is life imprisonment, with no possibility of parole, no reductions for good behavior, no exceptions. In the plea agreement, one detail stands apart from the legal language surrounding it. The government agrees that his wife Bernadette, fully cooperative, knowing nothing of what her husband had been for 22 years, would be permitted to retain a portion of his FBI retirement pension through a specific statutory provision that would otherwise be barred by the espionage conviction. The government invokes it. The man who spent 22 years transmitting the secrets of the United States to Soviet and Russian intelligence spent his last formal act in a courtroom, arranging for his wife to receive a pension check. He had read Philby's book at 14 and found in it something he recognized. Philby spent his final decades in Moscow, decorated, giving interviews to Western journalists who made the trip as a Cold War curiosity. He died in 1988, a Soviet citizen, having outlived the ideology he served. Hanssen died in a federal prison in 2023. He was 79. His wife kept the pension. Was he a traitor? The law answered that question in 15 counts. Was he something else, a man produced by a system that had failed to see him, who had spent 22 years ensuring it paid for that failure in the only currency he knew was real? That question does not resolve cleanly. It splits people. It is supposed to split people. Because the most dangerous intelligence officers are never the simple ones, the ones whose motivations fit neatly into a category that makes everyone left behind feel better about why they didn't see it coming. They are the ones who walked into the building every morning, took the oath seriously and not at all, read their own wanted posters and found them inaccurate, and understood, with the particular clarity of the genuinely intelligent operating in a system that underestimated them, that the only thing ever really at stake is whether you are seen. Hanssen wasn't the last. The FBI would spend the next decade asking one question, the question that all of this had made urgent in a new way. How do you build a system capable of catching the people inside it? They are still working on it.